We actually know quite a bit about David Johnston, born in Sudbury, educated at Harvard, Cambridge, and Queen's, principal of McGill, president of the University of Waterloo, and in 2010, appointed Canada's 28th Governor General. What you may not know is that the GG starts his days writing letters. Lots of letters. And now he's published many of them in a new book. It's called The Idea of Canada, Letters to a Nation. And Grandpa Book joins us now here in our studio. I know I'm supposed to call you Your Excellency.
I love the Grandpa Book.
I figured you'd like that better.
That's what my grandchildren call me.
That's
and
why
there are 12 of them.
You got 12 grandkids.
And the 13th is expected in June.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
In time for your 75th birthday?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. How do you still, let's just start with the title, because as we suggested from your background, you're not a guy from pretentious background, and yet everybody walks around calling you Your Excellency all the time. How do you stay humble and centered when people are calling you Your Excellency all the time?
Well, I'm very lucky. I've been married for 51 years, and my wife ensures that my hat size doesn't expand at all.
That'll do it.
That's part of just goes with the territory, Steve. I suppose it's a term of respect for the office, and one understands it as that. But there we are.
Okay. You start almost every day writing letters?
Almost every day. It's a custom that I've developed over the years when, the year before my wife and I were married, I was in England and she was in Toronto, and I wrote a letter every day to her. And I say, I hope my memory's working well. I actually had an arrangement with a florist. I say, or she says, send her a rose every day. I don't think it was quite every day, and this was a very romantic florist who, for a modest sum of money, did that. So that was a habit of maintaining contact. When I was away in Boston at university, I wrote a letter every Sunday to my family. And then when our daughters began leaving home for school, with the first one, I'd write a letter every morning when I came into the office. And then it became 5 copies of the same letter. And at any given time, one or two, the girls who received them would say, oh, there goes Dad blathering again. They put it in the wastebasket. One or two would read them, find them, and one would say, gee, that was really meaningful. But that one would change from time to time. But I felt so good because it was my contact with them. And then I've transferred it to my professional life. I often come into the office and I will do a letter or two to someone I met the night before, congratulate someone in the university who've done something. Or I've been out for my run coming in, and I have some ideas in my head that I put in bullet form.
And it's longhand?
Yeah.
You write them in longhand?
I do, yes. I sometimes dictate as well, but the letters tend to be longhand, and my writing is very difficult to read.
Huh. Where do you think the discipline from doing that so regularly comes from?
I think probably I'm as one of my daughters would describe, kind of an effective learner, that I read a lot for new ideas, and I'm very interested in people and collecting ideas. And when something kinds of registers, I often crystallize it in written form. And I'm a lawyer by training, so we're used to working with words, so maybe that's where it comes. I think the discipline of doing it on a regular basis is really the connection. And there's a funny story at McGill, and one of our deans was retiring after 15 years in the post, and we were at the retirement dinner, and I said some things, and he got up with a big box like that, and he opened it up, and there he had certainly some dozens of letters from me, and said, I'm really so grateful to have these. I can't read the principal's handwriting, so I don't know what he says, but I've chosen to say it's very favorable every time.
Very good. Your daughters, who wrote the introduction of the book, describe you as quote-unquote progressive, which I found interesting because I thought the Governor General was not supposed to betray any politics of any kind whatsoever. Well, have they outed you here?
Well, that's their view of their father, and on some other circumstances they would say I'm right out of the 17th century, so that's probably a relative term as to how far they've been able to bring me. But I do say, you know, without too much jest, Steve, that all of the important things in life I've learned, I think, from my children and now my grandchildren, and seeing the world through their eyes is a very interesting way to see it. Because we do live in a changing world, and it's great to have their perspective. And they are quite unabashed in criticizing their father for his shortcomings.
I know you love the country, and so I'm going to invite you right now to tell us what you think it says about this country, that a guy who's from Sudbury, who I guess grew up a bit in the Sioux as well, whose father ran a hardware store and whose mother was a housewife, is now the Governor General of Canada. What does that say?
That's Canada. We're a country of equality of opportunity. I think we've worked harder at equality of opportunity than any nation I know. We haven't completed it. We still have a ways to go, but that's simply Canada, that it's possible for anyone, I think from almost any backgrounds. We have some areas, I think particularly of our Indigenous communities, where we have a lot of work to do in ensuring that equality of opportunity is meaningful. But we have done well as a nation, particularly through our public education system, in trying to develop the talent, however it is, of young people to achieve whatever their hopes plan.
Let's get into the letters. You mentioned Champlain a lot in your letters.
Yes, with
you
reason.
like Champlain. How come so much?
Well, for a number of reasons. One, he was our first governor in all but name. Two, he was a very modern man. And three, when my appointment was announced, I carry books a lot, and the book I had in my hand was Champlain's Dream by David Fisher.
Yeah, it's like that.
But it's a remarkable book. David Fisher's a Pulitzer Prize winner, an American writing about Canada. And he described a Champlain I did not know. With my English history of Canada, Champlain for me was a French conquistador who came here to take fish and furs back to France, to plant the flag, and to convert the First Nations people to Catholicism, and was a pretty muscular guy. I guess he was a little bit of that, but he was a person who believed in the kind of Canada that we believe in today, an inclusive Canada, a peaceful Canada, a Canada that would function with the rule of law, a Canada that would respect freedom of religion. He was born a Protestant and had to convert to Catholicism in early middle age to save his life. He believed in working effectively, cooperatively with the people already there. In fact, he learned some of the native languages and made friends with all of the surrounding tribes, all of them, save for the Iroquois. And the reason he didn't do that is they were the enemy of all the others for a short period of time he did. And he saw the New World as operating on a new basis, which would not be focused on authoritarian rule and strict hierarchy and very segregated compartments of peoples, but a very inclusive, very progressive society where the rule of law flourished. That was Champlain.
So a bit of an example for you.
And
in
I
your,
think
in
for,
your responsibilities.
certainly for the responsibilities and for Canadians, that an inclusive country that experiments with this vast and sometimes challenging territory and learns to be able to live in it respectfully through collaboration with our neighbors.
One of the things that surprised me about the book is that you don't mind taking a shot at yourself. And you do. And here's part of a letter anyway, to the head of the United Way in Montreal that you wrote. You said, "How could I, as a Montrealer, live in a city with so much need and not be aware of it? How could I, as an educator of young men and women, talk about the latest advances in teaching methods and tools and not understand that many youngsters in my city couldn't engage their minds when all they were thinking about was the ache in their stomachs? Your organization," you wrote, "helped teach this Montreal educator about his city and his profession, and in doing so gave me a much-needed lesson in humility." You're pretty tough on yourself there. How come?
Well, with good reason. And that was a great experience. In Montreal, United Way is Centrade, and you have an English and French co-chairs, and I learned things about my city that I did not know and should have known, especially in my position. Number one, I guess you're always learning. Number two, if you got any kind of intelligence and antenna, you actually do pick up signals. But number three, I think that's true in our journey through life. I'm particularly concerned that we advance the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for example, an important juncture in our history. And I was in North Bay a week or so ago at Nipissing University, and we were looking at the curriculum that they've developed to try to tell the story of our First Nations people. And one of the leaders of the conference says, for us as Canadians to be able to do that, we must unlearn and then learn. We must unlearn so much of what is in our head, just as my conception of Champlain was a misconception. And we have so many misconceptions about those First Nations people and their history before the white people. And then we must learn and learn together. And as we collaborate in trying to make the equality of opportunity more real for our First Nations people, it seems to be, it should be not about us without us. As we work on constructive solutions to some of the challenges we're seeing today, we begin with the proposition that we must walk in the other person's shoes or moccasins, and then from that walk together.
Or ice skates. You talk about hockey. You were an All-American hockey player at Harvard. You know what you're talking about here. And with that in mind, you wrote, "Hockey is our national sport. because we've always thought of it as embodying qualities that we possess and hold dear: toughness, tenacity, and teamwork. How we square these virtues with fighting and goon tactics, we can't. It's impossible. Why do you think the NHL doesn't ban fighting?
Well, I think they operate on three principles about fighting. One is that it puts spectators in seats, and I don't think that has ever been tested. Perhaps it's tested during the Olympics and some of the world championships where you don't see it because it costs the team too much. Secondly, that because it's such a fast game, you need a way of letting off steam. I don't think you have to let off steam that way, and you should penalize it. And thirdly, that if you don't have that, then you'll have other forms of retaliation. I just don't accept that either. Other sports can deal with that without using fighting. My concern is primarily, or the focus is largely on parents and children, especially my grandchildren. I don't want my grandchildren to be in a game where the risk of injury is undue, and I think it is as presently played. Secondly, I don't think the game is best played that way. The reason hockey is such a superb game is because you can go so much faster on skates. And it's a very intricate game of teamwork, essential, but individual virtuosity. You don't set plays and stay exactly with them. You have to maneuver and always working for the mismatch. Those are great features of the game. You don't have to have the violence. And it also, the third and final point is that's not how we teach our children to grow up. We teach them to be competitive, to play hard within the rules, but the notion of trying to injure someone and put them into the boards to take them out of the game, that's not Canadian. And it's not the values that make our country a country that has always worked at avoiding extremes and avoiding unnecessary conflict and looking for the route that is one where both people can walk together.
I happen to agree with you, but you do notice that nobody goes to the snack bar when there's a fight at an NHL game. I mean,
Yes.
There's a bloodlust that is satisfied, apparently, by keeping it in the game.
For some spectators, I'd say let's give the other game a chance, and my guess is we won't lose too many spectators. And in fact, what we will do is see parents increasingly confident that their children can play in that game and not have undue risk of injury. And we're learning more about that with the work on the brain, and also raise them with the kind of principled approach to any competitive situation that we want to have.
You talked to the commissioner about this ever, Gary Bettman?
I have, yes.
What kind of reaction do you get from him when you suggest this?
They're on a particular mission, and I think they feel they and the Players Association are dealing with the matter. I have a different view.
I note that many governors general in the past have given us some of our most famous trophies. Your predecessor, Lord Stanley, gave us the Stanley Cup. The Grey Cup is for football, the Clarkson Cup for women's hockey, the Minto Cup for lacrosse. Have you ever thought of donating a Johnston Cup for something?
Well, I haven't thought of that, but I think it's really very attractive that governors general have been so involved in sport, because it's such an important part of Canadian life and should be celebrated in any way you can. Why is it important? Well, physical activity is important. Physical and mental health go hand in hand. Two, it's a way of living in this country, particularly through the seasons, that's very attractive. And number three, sport has great lessons. Let me give you one example, Steve. We give a certificate and letter that go to 3,300 young Canadian men and women each year who are academic All-Canadians. And these are people who played on a varsity team for their university in our Dean's Honor List. Some of the universities have about a third of their athletes who achieve this distinction. And so we have 8 of them representing the group who meet with us in Rideau Hall for a ceremony. And I congratulate them on being two-legged people, on showing that academic and athletic excellence can go hand in hand. And if you're excellent in one category of affairs, that transfers over to other categories. It stimulates that. You learn the lessons of striving to achieve, of discipline, teamwork. They're in fact three-legged people, because as you look at their academic achievement and their athletic achievement, you then get into a sphere that's called volunteer activity. And these young people are very prominent in that, not simply as members of the club, but the leaders of the club. So the leadership they've shown in academic and athletics transfers into the community activities. And there's something magic going on there, and sport has a big role in it.
Let's do another excerpt from another letter. You write, "It is only when we journey to the far north that we truly understand what it means to live in a northern country, what it means to be Canadian." What didn't you know about being a Canadian that you only learned by going so far up north?
Well, a lot, not just about going north, but traveling across this country from community to community. But I was citing John Buchan last evening. John Buchan was our Lord Tweedsmuir Governor General from 1935 to 1940, up to that time the most traveled of the Governors General. And he made a famous voyage to the north where he was going down the Mackenzie River and he was doing the galley proofs of his biography of Augustus Caesar. Buchan wrote 120 books in his lifetime. And that was not his full-time. That was not his full-time job, including spy mysteries like 39 Steps, etc., which is one category. Biography, another, Walter Scott, Montcalm, etc., Montrose, and then thirdly, essays about different subjects and some novels. The one he was writing in 1940, based on that northern trip, was called Sick Heart River, published in 1942 after his death, and it was his own respect for the North. And he said at one point, if you haven't traveled to the North, you haven't seen Canada. And I would say the same thing because it's such an interesting and fascinating and challenging part of our country. I was in Alert, the most northerly community in the world, like a year and a half ago in January. Minus 45 degrees there, went to the Mideast, plus 45 degrees, then to Vancouver Island, same plane, 0 degrees, it was just right. And there are 3 or 4 things that struck me about why our interest in the North is so important. One is because we have a stewardship for that land, and we must manage that stewardship appropriately. 2, here are the people, sparse numbers, who have populated that land for 10,000 years and have done so nobly with great courage. They deserve our support. Number 3, the science of the North is so interesting. We have so much to learn about what is happening in the North and the changes that are taking place. 4, it's where we practice sustainable development, how we deal with frontiers and manage them in ways that doesn't destroy the environment but ensure it's there for the next generation. And 5, it's part of Canada, and it is one more aspect of the enormous diversity of this land. And I think all Canadians should understand that as part of our heritage and celebrate it.
I know it's not fair to sort of ask the Governor General his views on topics that are plucked out of the headlines, but I'm going to make an exception here because the past week has seen some appalling headlines come out of Attawapiskat, for example. Does that give you the suicide pacts and so on? Does it give you pause as to how sustainable those communities are and whether or not they ought to be moved?
Yeah, well, let me move away from the very specific incidents, as I should. But to say, when I speak about the fundamental values of Canada, like equality of opportunity, like inclusivity, like fairness, like a chance for people to develop in their own way with their own cultures, I mean, that embraces the North and the northern communities and the First Nations communities. And I think the lessons that I draw are that this whole Canada has been built on an experiment that diversity can work, that we can bring together people of different cultures and different orientation, and somehow not just make it work, but that become a strength. Coming back to Champlain, for the example, his first settlement in Port Royal would not have survived the first 2 winters, 1605, 1606, I think, without the indigenous people providing them with fresh meat, and also a tea that they made from evergreen needles, which we now understand had vitamin C and combated scurvy. So there was a partnership from the very beginning, and I think we've lost sight of that. And therefore, as I look at particular crises in the broader context, it behooves all of us to say, how do we find the collaborative mechanisms where the promise of Canada, the quality of opportunity, life shall be better for your children and your grandchildren, is real to segments of our population where it's not real today.
Okay. This next group of questions is going to come under the category of, I've always wanted to ask you this. Do you vote?
I vote in municipal and provincial elections.
Not federal.
I'm entitled to vote in federal. And I preach to students at university as they leave me at convocation. I would say, remember, the taxpayer of the country has made an investment in you. You're intelligent people, so get out and exercise your franchise. I don't vote in federal elections, and the reason for that is, I guess, largely appearance, Steve. There can be times when the Governor General is asked to make a particular call that involves a division of opinion, and I've come to the conclusion it's better that I'm not going into a polling booth and people are saying, well, how did you cast your ballot?
Because that was going to be my next question, and so I don't have to ask it now. We do have a repatriated constitution with an entrenched charter of rights and freedoms. We technically still don't have Quebec's signature on that constitution. Is that something you think we need to address?
Again, that's a political question I probably shouldn't answer directly, but let me say this about our Constitution of 1982. Number one, Canada is a continuing experiment in parliamentary democracy, constitutional monarchy. Lasted for 1,000 years. And it's interesting to me to see how legal scholars around the world have gradually come to see the Canadian Constitution as very interesting. There's a study by two Columbia University Law School scholars in New York that says there are one or two constitutions that have kind of moved off the radar screen as the models, the French Constitution, the American Constitution, and Canada has become very prominent because somehow it's evolved a series of constitutional mechanisms that work well for us. We were a Westminster system very clearly until 1982 when we entrenched a Bill of Rights and Liberties in our Constitution. That trespassed on or challenged parliamentary sovereignty.
Yes.
And some of our scholars said you cannot marry a civilian Republican entrenched Charter of Rights into a Westminster parliamentary system. They don't work. Now, we had a little qualifier. We put the notwithstanding clause in to permit parliamentary democracy to trump a decision by the courts that something had infringed the charter, but that lasted for 5 years and would have to be repeated. Very interesting set of compromises there. I think it's worked very well, and I applaud the role of our Supreme Court in managing through those new patterns, those two different systems, and providing interpretive frameworks that make them work. And so scholars today say, we like the Constitution, but we particularly like the way it's been managed and handled by those who have to execute upon it, including the courts who have to interpret it.
I have to say, this is a completely unparliamentary thing to say, but I love the way you very skillfully don't answer the questions that you think are a little too political. That's a great skill. It disappoints me, but it's a great skill.
Well, it's probably one that I'm still learning.
Okay, here's the next one. Your Excellency, I'm going to invite you to look at the video screen up there because you had a front row seat at one of the most fascinating moments in Canadian political history. Sheldon, roll the clip, please.
Now, is this going to be a political question too, Steve?
I felt I owed it to the Canadian people, and I did. An apology for bantering about the subject. You, sir, owe the Canadian people a deep apology for having indulged in that kind of practice with those kinds of appointments.
Well, I've told you and told the Canadian people, Mr. Mulroney, that I had no option.
Well,
Truman, your next question,
you
please.
had an option, sir. You could have said, I am not going to do it. This is wrong for Canada, and I am not going to ask Canadians to pay the price. You had an option, sir, to say no, and you chose to say yes to the old attitudes and the old stories of the Liberal Party. That, sir, if I may say respectfully, that is not good enough for Canadians.
I had no option if I was able
That
to
is an
perform
avowal
that.
of failure. That is a confession of non-leadership, and this country needs leadership. You had an option, sir. You could have done better.
The 1984 Leaders Debate, Brian Mulroney, John Turner. Who was the moderator of that debate?
I've forgotten.
I haven't. I'm pretty sure
Was it you?
It was not. No, I was only 24 at the time, so it wasn't me. I'm pretty sure it was you. I've always wanted to know what you were thinking as that most famous debate moment in Canadian history was unfolding before your eyes.
Well, as I see it now, I realize how much younger we all were. It was a very interesting drama. It was a difficult situation. It was quite unusual. It was a 2-hour debate in 4 segments of 1.5 hour. And this was, the question was an appointment to foreign posts. So it was really a question that fell in the international affairs segment. And we covered that, I think, in segment 2. I think we'd covered domestic politics in segment 1. In a sense, this was also domestic politics. So one of the questions that was going through my mind at the time of the exchange was, you know, are we off track? And should I, as a moderator, try to get us back on track? But the debate went on, and there it was.
And fortunately, you did not interrupt. You let them go.
Well, I guess the issue was whether that matter had been explored fully in the earlier occasions, and presumably it had not.
Did you have any sense as you were watching it that this moment may very well decide the election? Because it did.
No, I didn't see it as that significant. I knew it was a significant exchange with a different view on what the powers of a previous outgoing prime minister were and an incoming prime minister. Very conscious of that, but no, I didn't attach an enormous amount of drama to it.
Okay. Let's, I know you didn't vote in the last election, but I do want to ask you a question about the last election anyway, because when Justin Trudeau was sworn in as the 23rd Prime Minister last year, you two, this is my observation, you can disagree with me, you two were, it seemed to me, unusually ebullient together. There was a hug, there were smiles, there was a very, very generous handshake from you to him. I'm guessing you didn't have hugs and smiles when you were dealing with Stephen Harper. I don't recall ever seeing it. And I suspect Canadians may be wondering, how come the difference?
Well, I'm not sure there was. I don't think the swearing in was filmed to the same extent when Mr. Harper's government was sworn in when I was GG, but I must say that it was a very emotional moment for all of them, and they had achieved a majority government, so you can be sure that there were lots of congratulations going around. It was a little different tone because it's a different group of people, etc., but the emotion was running high. With the swearing in of Mr. Trudeau's cabinet, it was covered really quite extensively, and I was quite surprised at the degree of emotion and the degree of hugging that was going on.
They were huggers, weren't they?
They were.
all were.
And so, you know, that was the picture that was presented. Rideau Hall is very interesting, and that ballroom where so many ceremonies take place is quite interesting. There's a different chemistry for each circumstance, and I love it when it's covered by television live because you can see some of that. You don't see it all, of course, but it's great to see the chemistry, and each particular one is different. I love the Order of Canada ceremonies, and you were part of it just a few months ago, and I bet you were really touched as you heard the story, Steve, of the different people like yourself being celebrated for their lives. There was a chemistry there that was really, really very uplifting and inspiring.
Okay, in our remaining moments here, let's finish up on this. You pose a couple of questions at the end of your book, and I would like to pose those questions to you and get your answers to them. The questions are, who am I and what do I stand for? How does David Johnston answer those?
Well, let me begin with the anecdote. That's actually the first letter in the book, and the circumstances were these. Sharon and I were in Repulse Bay in the north in late August, and we were there for an event, and it turned out that a Terry Fox run was taking place. And I think we've run in every one of the 32 or 33 Terry Fox runs, and there are about 140 countries around the world that now have the Terry Fox run, this Canadian, raising money for cancer research. And so we said, well, we'll run. And it was a 5-kilometer run. We got into our clothes, our running clothes, and a minute before I was to start the race, about an 8-year-old Inuit boy came up to me and said, "Who are you anyway?" I said, "I'm the Governor General of Canada." "What's your name anyway?" "My name is David." "Well, David, how old are you anyway?" "I'm 70 years old." 70 years old? I didn't think anybody could get that old. So Sharon and I finished the race, and I came and found him, and I put my arm around his shoulder, and I said, "Not dead yet, anyway." So that was the prompting of who are you anyway, and it caused me to reflect a little bit, not really so much on the role, but where I came from, who I am, and that was the beginning of the letters. I don't think I've answered your question, by the way.
You didn't answer some of my questions here today, which we may give this another shot after you've left the office, and you might be able to be a little more blunt about some of them. But I get it that you started a bit of a Twitter thing the other day, right? I don't know if you saw this, but when you weighed in on Peter Mansbridge's program.
Well, I was a bit surprised by that because Peter asked me about 2 issues that related to the last election. One was Syrian refugees, and the other was the niqab. And I was again trying to bring the conversation back to the fundamental values of Canada and the inclusiveness, and that's a difficult thing to do. I probably would have been better to say, I've really tried to set out my own views on inclusiveness in the book at some length, and probably that's where one should go for the answers to those
Senator
questions.
Linda Frum took a bit of a poke at you on. I don't know if you saw this.
I did.
But she said,
And that's
you're
a
not
point of
being. She said you're not being impartial.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, those are good questions to ask. The Governor General has an impartial role and must always maintain the respect for that role if it's going to work. And that's the reason that one is careful about expressing opinions on current important political issues that divide the country.
I look forward to having you on again when you can be way less careful. That'll be lots of fun.
We look forward to it, Steve, but thanks for having me on today. This is great.
In the meantime, I'm so grateful that you're the first sitting Governor General we've ever had on this program, and I'm delighted and would heartily recommend the idea of Canada, Letters to a Nation, which is a really brilliant write and is so thoughtful.
Well, the only thing I'll say about that, and I'm not trying to shill the book, it sounds like it, but all of the royalties go to support the Sovereign's Medal on Volunteerism, something that came out of a Caring Canadian Award, and that's to celebrate 1,000 or more unsung heroes across the country every year to say, look what you're doing to make our communities work. So there we are.
Your Excellency, Grandpa Book, thanks for coming on TVO tonight.
Great to be with you, Steve. Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.